I can curse, right?
Okay,
Go.
yeah.
What makes you say that? What was a bad experience where you came to that?
Because I spent money on stupid
Hello, it's Aaron here with Disruptors. I'm here with Willie Dennis. He flew all the way from Lauderdale, Florida. So we're going to find a little bit more about him outside of real estate.
Look, don't get me wrong. Nice things are great. I love nice things.
Make sure that there's a time and place that you're ready for that and that you don't prematurely do it where now you cause yourself problems.
So first of all, how long have you been in real estate and what do you do in the real estate world?
I got started in 2017, April, so about 6 years. And I mostly do wholesaling. I do some fix and flips, some buy and hold, but mostly wholesaling, and now I educate as well. I didn't choose it. I heard a podcast like 6.5 years ago. So I found out that you could flip real estate without any money, and I was interested.
Okay, so I had two questions for you. First, Willie Numbers. Why Willie Numbers? Why is that?
Yeah, so my background's in finance. I was a Merrill Lynch guy.
Oh.
And my buddy Max Maxwell, actually years ago, he told me, he's like, dude, you're really good at numbers. You should just call yourself Willie Numbers. And that was like 4 years ago. And it kind of stuck. So appreciate Max for that one. My biggest real estate failure. Well, I lost a ton of money on deals, bad deals. Selling a piece of my business to a partner and then getting it back. It was tough, yeah.
All right, so your second one, you said you're bilingual. See, Spanish, right?
Yep.
Okay, so the next question I want you to answer in Spanish. When you go out to meet people, what's the hardest thing you have to deal with like just like the language barrier with between English and Spanish or trying to get to a Spanish wholesaler?
And you want me to answer in Spanish?
I want you to answer in Spanish. I don't want to understand anything you say.
Lo más difícil es llegar a la confianza con el vendedor para que te entienda y que ya vea que no hay una barrera entre los lenguajes y ya ahí puede estar confiado con el vendedor y ya ahí se puede empezar la relación.
See, 100% what you just said right there. Don't know what word you just said, but you know.
My biggest real estate deal, single family was $244,000 assignment. Yeah, multifamily was $315,000 flip.
So my last question is, someone that's looking into getting the wholesale or just trying to expand their business, what would one thing you recommend or one lesson?
Seek out a mentor, sooner rather than later, and consistency. Just do anything consistently and just believe in yourself and you'll get there. It's really not that, and not as hard as you think it would be.
All right, one more. Sign off to me in Spanish. Tell them to watch your podcast.
Tienen que ver el podcast hoy a las 2 de la tarde, el tiempo de Arizona, y a las 4 el tiempo de la Florida.
All right, wonderful.
Stop.
What about your Spanish?
¿Cómo está?
Done. End the story. Thank you.
Shout out to Steve Trang. Jump on the Steve Trang. We real estate disruptors.
Hey everybody, thank you for joining us for today's episode of Real Estate Disruptors. Today we've got my good buddy Marck De Lautour with SBD Housing. Mark flew in from Kansas City to talk about what realtors and wholesalers get wrong. And he's probably really excited to be here this particular week. The Super Bowl is just right up the street. Now, I am on a mission to create 100 millionaires, and the information on this podcast alone is enough to help you become a millionaire in the next 5 to 7 years. If you'll take consistent action, you will become one. Now, we recognize that running a sales team is hard work, even thankless at times. You've got to hold people accountable to what they told you they want to do. So you might feel exasperated. You might feel like you're alone. I assure you that you are not. Ren and I are helping other business owners get through to their sales teams to yield record performance in this shifting market. If that sounds like something that might be interesting to you, text LEADERS to 33777. And if you get value today, please tag it from below. Share this episode right now. That way we can all grow together. And this is a live show, so please ask your questions for Mark to answer. You ready?
Let's do it.
All right. So let's just real quick. I know you've been on the show before, but just for everyone that's listening and hearing your story for the first time, what was your life like before real estate?
Boy, I was talking to one of your employees earlier, and he chuckled when I told him I'd been in real estate for about 21 years because he said, "Man, that's about as old as I am."
He's not lying.
No, life before real estate was college. I mean, I came straight out of college and got stuck into real estate. Flipped a house at a very young age and just kind of fell in love at first flip. So life for me was college and tennis and golf and hanging out.
So right into real estate. You didn't go get a degree to get a job and do the.
So university for me looked a lot like, didn't know what I wanted to do. I had the entrepreneurial flair. I knew I wanted to get into business for sure. Was certainly realizing at a young age, once I got into college, that there was no way I was going to turn pro in tennis. I was good enough to play Division I, and that obviously afforded me the luxury of getting my education paid for. But I stayed on, got my MBA, and then had been working and dabbling with my father-in-law actually on an advertising venture at the time, putting advertising inside commercial aircraft. But then September 11th hit, and clearly airlines were very leery of any new forms of advertising. So at that time, I'd flipped one house and got going.
All right, so you like that first taste, and you kept going.
Yeah, I just never. I think I was young enough, and when you have no overhead and a supportive fiance at the time that said, "Yeah, go do whatever you want to do." I was just not really wanting to go sit behind a desk and work for someone else. What's the definition of an entrepreneur? Someone that will be willing to work 80 hours for themselves so they don't have to work 40 hours for someone else.
Yeah.
That's that's definitely me in a nutshell.
Well, that's absolutely right. So who helped you along the way, right? I mean, going from your first house, I'm sure there are a few mistakes along the way. Who helped you in your journey to get where you're at today?
Oh, goodness. So many people. I think it starts with having supportive parents. So that was certainly, and my siblings are always just, yep, go do whatever you want to do. I mean, keep in mind, I flew halfway around the world. It's really coming full circle for me now because I have a young son, 16 years old, who's looking at going off to college. And I'm suddenly having flashbacks when I was his age, thinking I might want to fly halfway around the world to go to university in America, having been born and raised in New Zealand. So it's really come full circle, and I'm appreciative of the support that my parents gave me. Having said that, I'm a voracious reader. I love to read books. I think most of my mentors I don't know personally, but for sure, Rich Dad, Poor Dad, I know it's cliche, but that really altered my perception of real estate. And although I tried to, get into stocks and the stock market, just never made sense to me. So I've always been a real estate guy and just started reading all up on the real estate from a young age.
You mentioned Rich Dad Poor Dad, so like I kind of made this joke to someone the other day. So I think like this path that we go through is like it's Kiyosaki, and then at some point along the way, you find Sean Terry on a podcast, and somewhere along the way, like you're successful. Like there's like these two steps that a lot of people go through. And so, what were some of your biggest victories? Right, 21 years is a large body of work.
Yeah.
What were some of your biggest victories?
So I was a courthouse steps junkie. So I answered an ad in a newspaper, which some of your readers may not understand what that is, but it's this former medium that you used to pick up and look at.
It's like, it's on paper, it's black and white. Yeah.
There was an article in there, and it's in the Kansas City Star, and it said, "Come learn how to buy foreclosure properties." And so I answered the ad, free, right? So it was a lead in, and I went there and then went down to Springfield, Missouri. A guy who used to be in the education space is no longer there, a guy by the name of Larry Holder. And he taught me just how to buy houses on the courthouse steps. There were 50 people in the room at that time, Steve, and I'm curious now to see who kind of made a profession of it. I'm guessing not many. It went down and learned that and came back and kind of fell into this niche where I was very fortunate that this was back in the day where in Kansas City, at least, we only had like 2 or 3 people on the courthouse steps. So that's where I, crushed it, was buying hugely undervalued properties at 20, 30 cents on the dollar for, a long period of time. And it was very hard to go wrong when you're buying that much of a discounted properties. I always say time heals all wounds in real estate, but also if you can buy cheap enough, the mistakes you can clunk along, they're never, a few holes in the boat, you can just plug them. It's never the devastating blow that sinks your ship. So I was very fortunate to go along that. But some of the biggest wins, I bought an apartment complex for $10,000 and sold it for $650. I mean, that was
That's a pretty big win.
Kind of a big win. And but yeah, I've had my ups and downs. I mean, there have been some devastations along the way. I had a bit of business divorce that taught me a lesson. Kind of millionaire by the time you're 30, and then crush back down to nothing, and then have to build back up again. So there's ebbs and flows in anyone's career.
So let's talk about buying an apartment complex for $10,000. I'm guessing this is a courthouse step situation.
Yeah, and it was just a random one where most of the attorneys in town were advertising in two forms, the Daily Record and the Pulse, these two legal publications that they're not required, that they used to advertise all of their sales. It just so happened that this one attorney did not use that medium, and it happened to be my attorney that I was using for estate planning. And she said, "Hey, by the way, I've got this auction coming up, and there's not much owed on it, but I'm going to cry the sale." And they were required to announce where it was going to be, but it didn't have to be at in any one location, just a public venue. And so she just did it at her office out in front in the parking lot, and I was the only one there. She opened the bidding at $10,000. And it obviously needed a little bit of work, but yeah, I mean, I held it for a long time. It was actually a catalyst for my venture down to Florida, because I immediately bought it for $10,000 on October 30th. So 2 days later, I went to collect rent and got $5,000 in rent from all of it was a 12-unit apartment complex. So went and got all the rent from all the people, and then turned around and went to the bank and said, "Hey, I've got this asset. Can you do an appraisal?" I think it appraised at the time at like 300. So I immediately pulled out a $250,000 line of credit and started buying other properties. So real estate just cycles like that. If you have equity, you can capitalize. Now, I sold it years and years and years later. I think I held it for about a decade, so that's why it appreciated up to $650. But yeah, I ended up exiting from that one, and it was a great deal.
But even if you buy a $300,000 asset for $10,000, can't really lose.
Can't lose.
Yeah, and you said there was a business divorce.
Yeah.
What was the business divorce, and then what were the lessons you learned?
I learned, so the business divorce, I was flipping houses on my own, and had someone come to me and say, "Hey, why are you not doing more? These deals on the courthouse steps seem crazy." And I said, "Yeah, well, I mean, it's money. You've got to have cash on the day, cash on the barrelhead," as they used to say.
Cash on the barrelhead?
That's what they used to say, the auction. You got to have cash on the barrelhead. And
I've not heard that expression before.
So you've literally got to pony up same day and wire money, or sometimes bring it in certified funds. So, unlimited capital was a way for me to scale that operation. So 2 business partners came on with me. They were the silent, quote unquote, business partners, and I was the operations guy. And we had a good run for about 7 years. But when the market turned in 2008 and things started getting tight, where we could have pivoted a different direction and gone our separate ways. We owned about 120 doors at the time. A large portion of those completely paid off. I learned very quickly that if you own a third of a business and the other 2 business partners want to gang up on you, a hostile takeover is a very real thing. And so, it was a painful lesson, because I was just pushed out. But everything happens for a reason, and I grew through that. It was very painful,
I can imagine.
Tears and trying to explain to your wife why you no longer have a job or a business, and starting all over again. But everything happens for a reason, and I grew through that, and have maintained 100% control of my companies since that time, and was all the better for it.
Yeah, I think there are some challenges along the way, right? When you're building a business. Actually, Paul Sparks and I, we did an episode last Friday talking about like the importance of structuring a partnership the right way, setting that right expectations, but also how you should, in very, very few exceptions, never do a 50-50 partnership. Right?
Someone has to have decision-making authority. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So let's see here. So you had sent me a video, and I love the idea. I said, "Steve, on the show, we should talk about what realtors and wholesalers get wrong." So obviously you've done well, particularly in Kansas City. So let's talk about this concept. What is it that realtors and investors generally get wrong?
So here's a great example. We already talked about that apartment complex. Okay. So let's just say I bought it for $10,000 and immediately wanted to sell it. And let's just argue, for instance, I could have sold it for $300,000 at appraised value at the time.
But you might want to wholesale it for like $140 or something like that, right?
So sure. So let's say I buy it for 10, sell for 30, and it would have been a $290,000 gain. I would have paid tax on that. You're giving up $90,000 right off the bat to the government. And now you've got $200,000, and then you've got to go invest that and try and repeat the cycle.
Mhm.
The difference is I was able to get the $250,000 in a line of credit. And because you're borrowing that money, you can then turn around and invest it. You pay nothing in tax. In fact, it's a tax benefit because you can depreciate, although on $10,000, you're not depreciating much. But the idea is with any investment, you can depreciate and get a paper loss and at the same time turn around leverage and go buy other assets. The accumulation of assets is the key to wealth long term. And in a nutshell, I believe that both real estate agents and real estate investors transact more than just buy and hold.
Right.
And the greatest mistake that I believe they're making is that they should be holding more assets. The wealth that I have created in my lifetime is not from transacting, it's just from buying and holding, and then just, down the road, these assets double in value.
So we're to divvy up Mark's wealth, 100% of it. How much of that wealth came from active income? How much of that wealth came from buying properties?
Okay. You've got to be careful there because obviously your active income, if you're smart, you'll pour into, buying more assets.
Correct.
But as it sits right now, I would say that, 80% of my wealth is just from assets that I have bought and held and appreciated in value.
Right.
I would say probably 50% of my wealth is just pure appreciation because I've, bought assets for the last 20 years.
Yeah.
I mean, real estate in any market you're in, I would challenge someone to go back and pull MLS comps. Sometimes I'll be, comping a property for one of my acquisitions agents is tough comp. And I'll go back and look at data and I'll look and see the same house I could have bought that I'm thinking of buying now for 200,000 because it's worth 310. The same house, I could have bought, 10 years ago for 100,000.
Yeah.
It's just real estate doubles in value every 20 years.
So we were driving in Mesa the other day, my wife and I, with the kids. I can't remember exactly where we were going, but we're in Mesa. And as I'm driving, on the left-hand side are all these fourplexes that I've shown. As a realtor, I've shown these fourplexes. And they're worth more than, I think, $500,000 today. And I just drive by it, and I just shake my head. It's like, I was showing these when they were like 160.
Yeah.
Right? Like, we just bought it for 160 and just held on to it. Would have done pretty well for ourselves. And 160 was not a lot of money. 160 for a fourplex, you can't even buy a house today.
Yeah.
Right? For 160. So let's just say hypothetically, we got a good friend, Jason Medley, sitting next to you. Because Jason has said that a lot of times we try to buy assets for passive income at the risk or at the cost of our active income. You know what I'm talking about? Like, the best way to have passive income is to make a lot of active income. It's more or less his expression. You're familiar with?
Sure.
Okay. In this instance, we're talking about you should be buying more assets to buy and hold. So can you help me reconcile that argument?
Yeah, I mean, clearly, there's validities to both points. I think he's also buying assets, right? He chooses to lend money, and he's creating paper assets. I don't think many people have the ability to do what he does.
Not what he does. No.
So it's a unique proposition, but he's still creating an asset that spits off passive income.
Right.
100% agree that you have to have an active income to be able to go buy assets. I think those that, but I think that the message I'm trying to get out there is that I'm talking to people that make a lot of money, but they'll go buy a flashy car or a bigger house or take massive vacations rather than, I'm not trying to tell someone that's making, $50,000 a year, to start buying houses. I mean, that would be over leveraging. I just believe that there are very successful people in this world that are oblivious to the great asset that's out there for them to pour money into. And it's so easy for us to put hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars into the stock market where it's truly just volatile and you don't get the benefits of these four pillars of real estate, which is appreciation, the tax benefits through depreciation, the cash flow, and the scale with which you can, because of the leverage.
Yeah.
So,
and I love that we're talking about this topic because I'm in a different mastermind. It's a realtor mastermind in the Phoenix market. And there's this realtor, Paul Pastor, who I look up to. And I want to say about once every 4 to 6 months, he'll just put his fist on the table and it's like, you guys need to buy more real estate, right? It's like the greatest mistake that realtors make all the time is that they don't have rental income. It's like, you guys, and he looks around, right? He's been doing this for 40 plus years. He looks around. It's like, all you guys that I've known for all these years can't stop working. I can do whatever I want, whenever I want, because I've been picking up real estate all along the way. But for the life of me, I can't figure out why realtors who buy and sell real estate, who suggest on a regular basis it's a good time or you should buy real estate, who to this present day say you should be buying real estate,
Yeah.
are not buying real estate.
Well, and I think part of it, Steve, is that there's an active portion. They feel like they're going to get bogged down with the management.
Mhm.
And, without dialed in property management, the two big killers of cash flow obviously are vacancy and maintenance. If every property was occupied forever and never had any maintenance, everyone would do it. But
Yeah.
there's a negative connotation to thinking that they're going to have to answer phones. But you find the right property manager and that takes care of itself. I think that realtors are underestimating the greatest tax benefit the government gives us. If you're a fully licensed real estate professional, you're allowed to take 100% of your paper losses in years. So you would be minimizing the taxes that you're paying to the government through the actual depreciation you're taking on your assets. And the other thing is, people look at an asset and say, oh, it's only cash flowing, a couple of grand a year. And if someone moves out, then that's my whole cash flow gone. They're missing the whole point.
Mhm.
This is not about monthly cash flow now. It's about having cash flow in the future. The biggest misconception, I think, with regard to real estate is that the monthly cash flow from a piece of real estate is going to be life-changing now. No, it is not. You're not going to be able to go and buy real estate and have it change your life. However, you can also not go in retirement and buy a massive portfolio. You have to have had time work for you
Mhm.
because you'll leverage the asset and someone else will pay that mortgage off for you. And then in 15 or 20 years' time, when that asset is paid off, then you have that life-changing financial freedom
Right.
from having a fully paid off asset that will be cash flowing. So that's, I think, the thing people don't realize is you're not buying it for cash flow today. You're buying it knowing that you will be getting it in the future. It's delayed gratification is the
Yeah.
sign of maturity. I mean, it's the classic mature play.
So we had someone on the show, I want to say 2-3 weeks ago, Jason Griggs, right? And he's in the Vegas market, and he is a realtor and young guy, or younger than me. So I guess take that for what it's worth. And he's got 27 properties in the Vegas market, single family homes that are nearly paid off, right? And he's been doing this for not that long, less than 10 years, right? And I asked him, like, well, how come you're like the only realtor that's like, you're one of the very few realtors that's actually doing this? Like, well, I asked around and it seemed that all my wealthy friends own real estate. I was like, oh, hey, that's a clue, right? That's a clue we can run with. And so he's been challenged by even peers in our community. Hey, you should do a cash out refi. You should leverage this so you can buy more assets. And his answer to those suggestions was, but I'm making the kind of money I want to make passively. I can do what I want whenever I want. I can, if I want today, take my wife and kids and just go to another country and not have to worry about a thing.
Yeah. COVID didn't freak him out.
COVID didn't freak him out.
No.
Right? And you're not accountable to you have to be careful what you say. You have to be careful what you do. You can live your life exactly on your own terms.
Yeah, what we coach our investors. So obviously we sell turnkey real estate to
Yeah.
high income, high net worth individuals or people that are just wanting to build their own portfolio. And we tell them the key is that you scale with leverage to get to a number that once paid off would satisfy your monthly passive income that you're trying to get to.
Mhm.
So what I'm saying is, let's say that they want to get to $20,000 a month from passive real estate. Well, roughly, when assets are paid off in Kansas City, you're going to bet $1,000 per asset, for every house. So you'd therefore, in that instance, you'd just scale quickly with leverage to try and get to the number 20 houses as soon as possible. And then after that, you keep just chunking down the equity. Don't go turn around and put more money into the stock market. You start chunking down the equity and have your tenants paid off.
Mhm.
So it's a scale with leverage, power down the debt, and then you reach your freedom number very, very quickly.
Yeah. And then you touched on something a moment ago that, people may have missed this, is that a cash out refinance is not taxable. So can we just spend a few minutes here and explain what that means?
I'm happy to share a personal story if that would get story time, right?
Sure, let's go story time. Yeah.
When it's more a personal story, that helps. But I went back and looked at my portfolio in 2019, late 2019, just happened to be right before COVID hit. And I was looking at this and thinking, the thing that frustrated me was that I'd always just took one mortgage out per asset, right? And I had about 60 or 70 assets. And so I was looking at them all and doing different valuations, and I called my lender and said, look, rates were low. Can I just put all of these on one note?
Mhm.
So I didn't really, I don't want to give myself too much credit that I fully knew exactly what I was doing, but I knew if I went on one note, I could suck some money out. All of a sudden, the appraisals came back, and I was like, wow. I mean, the equity that I'd slowly built up, because you kind of ignore them. Like these real estate investments are, just sit there and ignore it because they just operate, they perform. I have my property management team managing them, and you just forget about them. You just slowly accumulate them over time, and they're just sitting there doing, your checks coming in every month. But then what you don't realize is how much they're appreciating in value. So we had them valued, and there was just this massive multi-million-dollar gain that is just appreciation.
Mhm.
So I was able to set myself up for, at least the protection of a downturn, which ended up happening, clearly, where I sucked a lot of money out of my portfolio, tax-free, because it's just borrowed money. I do have to pay that back.
Mhm.
But the benefit was that I had the rental income to offset that payment. So now my tenants, in debt for millions of dollars, but my tenants are slowly paying that debt off and will be paid off in 15 years. And I was able to just hoard some cash and sit on the sidelines because there's a lot of financial strength by having a lot of dry powder in the bank
Mhm.
and having paid off all personal assets. And
Yeah.
that is a nice place to be.
Yeah. So just to illustrate for everyone that's listening. So let's just say, for example, you got a property that's $500,000, and let's just say it's paid off, right? If you guys were to sell that property, you can get $500,000 cash, minus realtor fees, whatever, right? $500,000 cash. Whatever profit on that property, you have to pay in taxes. It's taxable income. We're assuming here there's a rental property. But if it's free and clear, and you'll get a cash out refinance from the bank, let's just call it $300,000. You pull out that $300,000, that's borrowed money. It's not actual. It's not a cash distribution. It's a refinance. So for everyone that's listening, you're getting $300,000 in your pocket. You have to service that debt, but it's not profit. It's debt. It's just taking money out of the balance sheet. So you're just moving $300,000 of equity into your pocket, but you have to service that debt. But because you have to service that debt, and it's real debt, it's not income.
Yeah. And so because you have a tenant that's in there, again, you've got to manage the asset. If your tenant moves out, then yes, you'll be responsible for the payment. But you know what you can do with $300,000 in that example? Put a little bit in a savings account in case the tenant moves out.
Yeah.
So there's power in that. And what you realize is when you scale that and do that, 60 or 70 times versus just once or twice, then, the numbers get pretty big.
Yeah. And I've shared with you, right? Like I am envious of all you folks in the Midwest because this cash out refi thing you guys can do like over and over and over and over again. A little more challenging in the Phoenix market.
Well, I would challenge you that in the same way that you have the benefits of appreciation here and investors can invest here, don't feel like you have to be investing in your own market. Through collaboration and partnership and turnkey providers. We have investors from all over the world that are choosing to invest in Kansas City. Most of them are, California, Florida, Pennsylvania, and that kind of thing, but a lot from Australia, New Zealand, the UK, Germany. I mean, all over the world.
Well, that's actually one of the things I wanted to execute. I don't know if it's 2023 or 2024, but I want to be able to create something within our organization so that everyone that works here can invest, right, in a portfolio. So we can get a portfolio, right? It's held by the umbrella company, but everyone has the opportunity to invest that works here so that we can truly create wealth.
Yeah, I think
within our
that's
organization.
so. That brings to mind, Steve, one of the fallacies that I think happens in the workplace is, when someone signs up day one at, and they go work for T-Mobile or BMW or one of these big corporations, and they sign up, hey, we do a company dollar match. Where does that money go?
401k.
Straight into the stock market.
Yeah,
right.
that's
So it's
trash.
like they're truly just training you from a very young age, like the way to build for a time, and then they see the fluctuations. You can't really lever it until it gets to be super sizable. You don't get any tax benefits from it. So it's just you're taking less out of your paycheck, and then you're trying to struggle to make ends meet. But again, the mature investor is someone that says, I will choose where I put my retirement dollars. So I'll be mature enough to say, I'll take more money coming into my pocket, put it over here into an account that I'm going to save up to buy real estate with, and then, figure out either A, they're going to partner with someone or actively do it themselves, but figure out some targeted strategies to actually start buying and acquiring and holding real estate.
Yeah, and again, that's something I'm passionate about. I want to help everyone here that works with us to be able to do that.
Dude, you're saying your goal is 100 millionaires, right?
100 millionaires.
Dude, that is not hard. If people would seriously just go out there and buy, and it's time,
Mhm.
but they just buy and hold assets for a long period of time, and the millions happen.
Yeah.
It cannot not happen.
No, it's impossible for it to not happen. So you mentioned that realtors are missing out on this opportunity because they're active. What's it, active investors? What do you call it? What's that term? You have to check that box when you
Real estate professional.
Real estate professional.
Yep.
Can you elaborate on real estate professional?
Yeah, the IRS gives special designation to real estate professionals that allow them to take depreciation
Mhm.
100%. So there are some of our clients that are dentists or doctors or lawyers that are active and they don't spend X number of hours in real estate profession. They cannot take, I think they're capped at 25,000 or a certain percentage of the paper losses if they were to take depreciation. Which when you're just doing a single family portfolio is not that big a deal, but when we have investors work on our multifamily syndications, and there might be like a $35,000 or $100,000 bonus depreciation involved, they cannot get the benefits of that.
Really?
But with real estate professionals, they could take, a $50,000 or $100,000 and invest it in a multifamily syndication and get bonus depreciation, where if you put $100,000 in, you're getting a 2.5 multiple back. So you get to write off $250,000 in the same year that you invested $100,000.
Mm-hmm.
There's all kinds of amazing strategies that real estate investors and real estate agents specifically can that are open to learning about these, that they can go play in that space that they're just not utilizing.
Yeah. And so I see a bunch of you guys watching here. Please fire away your questions, because I want to make sure that, for those of you guys that are watching, obviously you guys are real estate investors. Make sure, take this opportunity to ask Mark any of these questions, because I want to have confidence, that you guys have the tools and ability to go out and execute this, right? Like you were saying, right? We're on a mission to create 100 millionaires.
Mm-hmm.
The best way to create millionaires is for you guys to actually buy and hold real estate. We talk about a lot on the show, on this channel, about how to create active income, but active income is not directly correlated. It's highly correlated, but it's not directly correlated with creating wealth. You got to eventually buy properties to create wealth.
I'm sitting here with gray hair appearing from the last time I was here, mate. And the one thing that you said that you had talked about the guy in the room that was talking to you. One thing that I hold true is that I've never met a gray-haired lady or gentleman that's in their 60s or 70s that said, I wish I didn't own all that real estate that I bought 50 years ago.
No.
You just, anyone who owns real estate and has held it for a long time has a financial piece that most others don't have. It's just a fact.
So we had Leon Johnson on the show years ago, and one of the things he said was, my only regret is ever selling any of my properties. Like, that's his only regret. It wasn't this property I bought. I mean, we have our nightmare stories, right? It is whatever. But we don't regret it. It's just part of our journey. But the ones that we sold, those are the ones that we regret.
Yeah, so we sold a family home down in Florida recently, and I sold it for X. And I looked and thought, I got a really, really good price on it. And then when I looked just 2 years later, this is post-COVID, just in 2 years. So we sold, I think, in 2020. And then I just looked at last year, it had gone up by another 30%, the same house. And I'm thinking, to your point, I don't often regret my acquisitions, but I often regret the properties that I've sold and passed on.
Yeah. So let's see what else is there. I want to make sure we hit this topic before we move on. I think I got all my questions asked. Is there anything I didn't ask about this as far as what realtors and investors get wrong?
No, I think it's I just firmly believe that if the agents themselves or wholesalers, investors could, just remember that, take it from an old guy, right? That's been in the game for 20 years. If for every house that they flip, they'd hold one, or every 2 houses they flip, or every, second wholesale commission they put in and buy another house. Just plan on it and plan to take that course of action. And if you don't want to mess with management, make sure you got a good manager in place. But they will look back 10 years and just thank this episode. They'll thank Steve Trang for
and Mark
for leading them down that road. I've never seen someone lose from buying and holding real estate.
So we got Scott Graff. He's a successful realtor in our market, and he happens to office in here as well. And so we were actually talking this morning, and I was saying, man, it's really fortuitous to have this conversation, because you and I are going to be talking about this later on. Because we were talking about when we were younger, we wish we bought more assets, right? So he's acquired assets, I've acquired assets, but it's like when we were younger, we were told, we were instructed by our wiser elders, hey, you should buy real estate and hold on to it. and we dismissed it.
Mm.
So, why do you think the younger investors, people are listening to this right now, what are the reasons why they will not take action?
I think it's two things. One is finite capital, right? So they're like, well, I only have $10,000 and that's not going to buy a house in Phoenix. So they don't go and educate themselves on areas where $10,000 might be enough to go, buy something. And they don't want to have, there aren't many agents or investors that just stockpile cash so a lot of it is patience and maturity. They're not mature enough investors to realize that, putting 10 grand in the bank, you don't need to go invest that now in the stock market. You can just wait until you get to 40,000 and then go buy a quality asset. And then the other one is just not knowing their options, and not educating themselves enough to know that there are people they can collaborate and partner with to do this for them. It's the who, not how mentality. It's not how can I start investing in real estate, but who could I partner with and collaborate with to bring deals to the table where I could successfully invest in real estate without the hassles and mistakes that most rookies make. Because there's a fear associated with it. What if I put all my money in and something goes wrong, right? I mean, there's a fear attached to anything that you're doing for the first time. I would just challenge that, partner with someone who's done it before so you don't make the mistakes that they made when they were first going.
Yeah. I have the sneaky suspicion that you don't care for the stock market.
I have very little money in the stock market. Correct.
So what are why should someone not invest in the stock market?
Look, if I want to go buy $100,000 worth of Google stock, how much money do I need?
About $100,000.
If I want to go buy a $100,000 house, Pace Morby would tell you, how much money do you need?
0.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You can just scale a portfolio better. So look, at the end of the day, if I had, if I was sitting on $20 million, would I go, buy all real estate? Maybe, maybe not. But I think most of us start off in a place where we're trying to scale and grow a portfolio of wealth. And real estate is the safest vehicle, way more safe than the stock market. And there's there's utility. I can't get passive cash flow from the stock market. And everyone will say, oh, dividends or this and that. I get it. I understand the game. I understand the two variances. But, cash flow is a very real thing. And I can't leverage to buy stocks. I can't get massive cash flow. I have to sell assets in order to gain cash flow from them if I'm going in the stock market direction.
Yeah.
So I like the appreciation upside, which you can argue the stock market appreciates as well, but they don't allow you to depreciate. So it's the other three levers. It's scaling with leverage. It's the depreciation tax benefits, because the government could care less if you invest in the market, but they absolutely want you to provide housing for people.
Right.
And then lastly, it's the cash flow that in retirement, I can just hold these forever. And the one thing we haven't talked about, Steve, is the legacy play. They even give you step-up basis, which is a CPA's or an IRS code that says, when I pass away, when my wife and I, let's say we pass away on the same day, and so our heirs are left our assets, their basis, which we can talk and go deep on this if you want to, but their basis steps up. So if my basis through depreciation, I would be depreciating my assets down to 0 over a 27.5-year life, typically on single-family homes. So in 27.5 years, my basis, or what I have in the property on paper value, will be 0. So if I were then to sell a portfolio for whatever, $1 million, then you would be paying 30% of that in tax on the sale. However, if my heirs if I pass away and my heirs receive that same portfolio, the $1 million, their basis comes in at $1 million. So if they turn around and sell that $1 million the same day that they inherited effectively, they would be taxed 0 because they're in it for $1 million, they sold it for $1 million. So step-up basis is another way that there's life-changing wealth transformation or generational wealth transferring from one to another. So you look at these families that have truly, the Rockefellers and Vanderbilts and Trumps and all that, it's because they pass the wealth down from generation to generation, and it's not taxed. So they can scale and grow it, and it's largely through real estate.
Yeah, so that is actually my specific plan, right? It's basis step up, right? Leveraging that. So buying rental properties, keeping them, and then passing them off to my kids at full market value as a non-taxable event. So that's, if you guys didn't catch that, right? You buy properties, you depreciate it down to 0 with the help from the U.S. government, and then you can pass it on to your kids, and they won't have to pay any taxes. Whereas if you pass it off in stocks or cash or any other assets, even gold, they'll have to pay taxes
Yeah.
on the whole thing.
And there's currently a limit. I mean, there's a limit up to like $23 million, right? But I mean, if you get to that portfolio, well done. So, there's limitations, but just Google step-up basis and how it works in real estate, and they'll figure it out.
Another thing, the reason why I don't particularly care for the stock market, right? So you and I have met a lot of wealthy people who they say, yeah, I mean, it's real estate, obviously. Like, well, it's so obvious for them. It's real estate. But how many people do we know is like, man, I made all my money in the stock market? There are some, right? But who really gets wealthy in the stock market? The brokers.
Yeah.
Right?
People that are trading.
The people that are actively trading your stock, right? They get asset management, 1 or 2%, right, of the portfolio. So if Mark invests $1 million with me, I will make $20,000 at the 2% every single year in fees. And I just need to, as a stockbroker, have a bunch of marks, right? And just get the 2% from that. And that's my living. So the people that actually make money in the stock market are the brokers.
You got it.
Yeah, they don't really talk about that so much, right? That's kind of like a little secret. So let's talk about the shift in this market. So I felt an adjustment last year. Did you feel any adjustments last year, 2022?
Yeah, 22 is my lucky number, ironically, and it was a very unlucky year for us.
Yeah.
We fix and flip a lot of assets. We had scaled aggressively. We are a turnkey provider, as we talked about, trying to change someone's provide them generational wealth. So we're selling them done-for-you rental properties. So we acquire distressed assets ourselves, we rehab them ourselves, we get them rented out ourselves, and we retain the property management. But then once it's a fully rented out turnkey rental property, we sell it to an investor with their hands up saying, hey, I'd like to build generational wealth. So obviously when we have so much demand, market's going up and everyone's like, I want more, I want more, I want more. And so we're trying to scale and grow, but we talk about velocity of capital and trying to get an asset from acquisition all the way through the pipeline to get it sold on the back end can take 5 or 6 months. And suddenly COVID hit and we were kind of delayed a little bit with material and supply chain and labor going up. And so it kind of was bleeding out to like 7 months. And then our investors, when interest rates started skyrocketing, July, August of last year, they'd almost doubled from 3% to 6% in a very 3 or 4 month period of time. Our investors were then saying, hey, let's just, I just want to pause. I want to wait. So we had all this inventory and our investors weren't buying. So yeah, we absolutely felt the shift. And then probably 50% of our inventory was on the turnkey side, like selling to investors. And then the other 50% was retail. So now we've got retail, listings that are out there that people are just like, I don't think I'm going to buy. And I like to say that there was a fervor in the market, call it even just a year ago, really. In March, April of 2022, it was still everyone wanted to buy. And then all of a sudden, when August hit, retail buyers went away. And all of a sudden, we were left there with a bunch of assets that we had to sit on. And when you need to sell assets, you've got one lever to pull, and that's sales price. You just had to drop price. So yeah, we felt it for sure. We lost money in Q3, Q4 on a lot of assets. Luckily, we were well positioned. We saw, didn't see it coming, but we were kind of, we'd been expecting something, right?
We'd been preparing for years.
So we were, obviously financially fine, but it was, you don't like losing money on deals. And so you have to really start looking at, the policies and procedures and systems and process you have in place to make sure that we could quickly get these through the pipeline.
Yeah. So when the spigot stopped, right? Because the spigot was like on full blast.
Yeah.
And then started in March, started kind of like someone started twisting a little bit, and then they just shut it off.
Yep.
How many properties were you holding on to?
147.
147 properties.
Yes. That everyone was like, I don't want to buy them.
Well, and I was one of those, right? Like, because you and I had a conversation early 2022. It's like, hey, Mark, I need to start reducing my taxes. I need to start acquiring properties.
Yeah.
What do you got, right? And then the market shifted.
And at the time, we were like, dude, I'm really I got so many buyers, I don't know if I can even help you.
Right.
So, no, we got to 147, and I had a lot of very difficult conversations with my CPA, with my coaches, with my team, and we set a goal, okay? And we even made T-shirts. We were committed to this goal, saying, chasing 90. Like, no one knew what, like, are you trying to buy 90? I'm like, no. Are you trying to sell 90? No, we want to sell down to 90 was our big goal. So by the end of the year, we wanted to go from 147. I think we finally committed to this in about September. So from September to 12/31 of 2022, I said, come hell or high water, we are going to be down to 90 assets. And my team, we're like solo. Now, again, sell. So clearly it's like sell at all costs, just get it off the books, because when the market's tanking, you don't know where bottom is. So you'd rather trade today on your own terms than retrade down here on someone else's terms and be forced to sell. So we aggressively sold, and really, honestly, really proud of the team that we got down. We beat our goal. We got down to just 77 houses on the books at end of year. And now I think we're down to around 57. And we're starting obviously now to start buying again and fill the pipeline. But so that was a big exercise for us and something I'm very proud of.
Yeah. So what organizational changes did you have to make? Or what business decisions did you need to make in that shifting market?
So the first one was sell at all costs. Like, pride goes out the window when you're forced to sell.
Yeah.
So it wasn't, haggle, negotiate, now we're paying seller pays and closing costs. It's funny how the market has shifted. Like in 2021, seller would come to us and a buyer would come to us and say, we want seller paid closing costs, and we'd laugh at them, and how far that pendulum
What an outrageous suggestion.
Yes. Now we're like, hey, we'll buy your mortgage down, and give you seller paid. So yeah, the market we're certainly open to that. We got creative on the turnkey side. I mean, we had a lot of investors that were still saying, hey, I still want to buy, but the rate's high. What can you do? And so we did rental guarantees, on our properties, making sure that we could get them rented, get them sold quicker. We'd guarantee the rent even before the tenant was in place. We waived some property management fees. Anyone who bought a property before 12/31, we would waive property management fees for a calendar year. We got creative because you're looking at an investor's at the pro forma, and the only thing that's really changed, because again, I'm sitting here saying it doesn't matter when you buy real estate. You can buy it even in the upswing, downswing, it doesn't matter. You just got to hold for 20, 30 years. And our investors knew that. So our turnkey stuff, we didn't have that difficult of a time getting rid of it as soon as we leveled the playing field by bringing their cap rate up, and we did that by reducing their expenses. So the levers we pulled were lease up fee and reduced management fees, and a little bit of decreased price on it as well. So we just pulled that lever, and then it becomes super appealing. They're still buying at a 7 cap, which is kind of what our expectations are for our investor base. And so we did that. The other thing was pivoting. We'd pivoted into new construction, and the new construction fourplexes and duplexes were a big part of our mindset for 2022 and 23. And although they got delayed in 22 and pushed into 23, that was a big pivot because they have been very, very popular, and we're able to pre-sell some of those. So that helped us in the interim as well. We did a little restructuring. I think we had to lay off 5 people, which I'm not proud of. But that's part of sitting in the CEO's seat, is you have to worry about all 30 employees, not just the one that you're laying off, right? Yeah. It's like in the best interest of the company to do so. And for the first time ever, and this is a credit to the culture we have built. Like we could go deep on culture. Actually, it's our commitment to culture and team building. Everything is so strong that the people that I actually laid off thanked me for the time they'd spent in the business, which I had never had that happen before. Like say, hey, obviously it's a sensitive topic, and we're come in, pull you in, and hey, so sorry, I've got to make some difficult decisions right now. And they said, hey, thank you so much I've learned so much, and thank you. And it was like, wow, that really hits you when you're, creating their worst day that they've had in some time, and they thank you for it.
Yeah. I mean, that's a powerful testament to all that. So down to, you said 77 assets?
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. And I appreciate you sharing this, right? Because there's not a lot of people talking about the challenges, right? It's like, no, you got to double down marketing, you got to do this, you got to do that. So I appreciate you being involved.
That was the other pivot. So to get down from 147 down to 77, we had to stop buying, which is not fun, because when you're making money on assets that you're fix and flipping, if you shut off the faucet here, you suddenly you're effectively killing revenue in 5 or 6 months' time.
Yeah.
And we shut down for November and December and didn't buy anything. And so, come June, July, there's going to be revenue that is no longer coming into the company on our fix and flip side. So again, blessed that we made some smart decisions, financially stable through dry powder in the bank, but also investing in a different asset class, which was the new construction multifamily. So the benefit of dropping the millions of dollars from that revenue in the summertime will get us through this awkwardness in the moment. And we cut advertising for that period as well. So there were some big moves there just to make sure that we right-sized and focused on the right thing. But I think anyone who's not looking at their bottom line right now with some serious consternation needs to, be kind of checking their look in the mirror.
Yeah. And then, so you guys are buying again,
Yep.
and you guys are back to being the biggest buyer in the KC market.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's fair to say. I mean, there are people that might wholesale a few more properties than us, but as far as someone who's fix and flipping, I don't know anyone that's doing more volume than us. But we are going to dumb it down. We got up to where, we're doing a couple of hundred a year, and that was stressful. And what I'm realizing now is that we put way too much strain on our rehab team and the contractors involved, and just assumed that, if we were averaging 5.5 months, we could double volume and still stay at 5.5 months of construction, and that's just not how it works. So we're now probably going to just cycle back down to just doing 10 or 12 a month and call it good. So 100 to 120 houses a year.
Only 10, 12 a month. No big deal. So I want to get to the audience's questions. And right before we do that, we're going to do a very, very quick commercial.
These 8 steps are why I was able to build a sales floor that produced over $20 million annually in wholesale profits. If you take and embrace these same steps, I know for a fact it's going to work in your organization too. Now, we only have 30 seats available in this classroom. I can't work with everybody. This is super personalized and super custom to your organization. I will personally work with each and every one of you to craft the language, the culture, the KPIs, the 15th and 30-day protocols, and help you go home with a toolbox for leadership that is going to drive results. I hope that you can take advantage of this opportunity. During this 2-day workshop, I'm going to be going over these 8 steps and so much more that I didn't even have time to mention in this video. I'm going to personally sit down with you on a one-on-one basis and make sure that you have the tools that are going to get you success. This sales leadership program has a money-back guarantee. If you don't see improvement in your revenue numbers, improvement in culture, improvement in accountability, we personally guarantee to refund the full amount of your payment.
All right. So the first question on YouTube, B Fleet, interest rate dropped not by much. How do you see any markets changing coming, or do you see a decrease still? So I guess we're asking you to look into the crystal ball here.
Yeah, happy to. I mean, it's just my opinion, but I mean, that's what he's asking, right? I mean, no one knows, but I believe we're going to have a really strong month of sales. We're even seeing, because we have our pulse on the market on the retail side, we're still actively buying and selling. We have about 20 active listings on the market, and we're getting multiple showings again, not multiple offers as often, although that occasionally is happening, but we're getting a lot of showing activities picked up. It was dead for October and November were just dead. December picked back up a little bit. We were blessed with a pretty decent winter in January where it wasn't too bad, and we started selling product, and we're really seeing it pick up. I believe March through July will be a strong retail side, but after July, I do anticipate it probably falling off again a little bit. I'm not bullish on, November, December of 23.
What is the cause for that?
I just think there'll be more. I think more people will put their houses on the market. Right now, there's still such low inventory that when your house is on the market, you're getting any eyeballs that are on it will go. But I think that, we are very cyclical in Kansas City. Winter, the months of December and January are our slowest, and we really haven't had a slow winter for a long time. It hasn't built back up. You look at like a pendulum, the normal amount of housing on the market is 5 months. And in 2014, it bottomed out and got to about 11 months of inventory on the market in 2014 when all of the craziness
That was the slowest you guys ever got?
What's that? 11 months of inventory on the market?
That's the slowest you guys ever, I mean, over here, we got to like 3 years of inventory.
Wow. Yeah, no, it was about 11 months of inventory on the market, I believe was where we pushed out. And now we're still back to about 1.7 months. We got to about 0.7 months of inventory in the 3 weeks. Now we're about back to 1.7 or 2 months of inventory in the market.
Yeah, so you still have low inventory.
Yeah, so it's still low inventory, so I'm feeling bullish, but it has to just keep bleeding. Now I think, so market will definitely be depressed a little bit more as more inventory comes on the market. It'll be harder to sell, but that's why I think the attention to detail, we've actually brought on a consultant who goes to every single one of our flips as an interior designer, just to give us a little bit of flair. I think we had gotten, when we started looking internally at what our weaknesses are, I think we realized that, just the standard package of rehab was not going to cut it anymore. We needed to establish ourselves to be the premier house flipper.
Yeah.
And again, we don't do $1 million flips, so we're certainly not going super, super high end. But in that range from 200 to 500,000 in Kansas City, we offer a really good product.
Mhm.
And that's what we got back to was elevating ourselves beyond what we found that everyone started copying us.
Mhm.
And so we started looking at all these flips and like, oh, that looks like one of ours. Hey, it wasn't. What's going on?
Mm-hmm.
So once we saw that, imitation is a great form of flattery, but we needed to raise our game. So now we're going back and keeping up with the trends and doing a few different things. Using wallpaper again. We're doing accent walls with some trim carpentry and those kind of things to elevate, even on like a $300,000 house.
All right, got it. Follow-up question is: do you happen to know if Illinois has any restrictions on wholesaling real estate?
I don't think anywhere has wholesale. No, I don't. I think you can wholesale in every market. I'm pretty sure. Again, not a huge wholesale. It's probably a question that you could answer.
Yeah, I would say Illinois. You just have to be a licensed realtor to wholesale in Illinois, which is a really silly rule. But yeah, so in Illinois, the restriction, Illinois and Oklahoma, you have to be a licensed realtor. Do you buy in Florida or Illinois?
We just pulled out of Illinois. We were there for a while. We found that the bureaucratic red tape was just for a fix and flipper was too much for us to bear, and we started getting our rehab pipeline just got extremely bloated, just sitting on waiting for them to act. So we pulled out of there. And no, Florida is a market that we have been in. We took advantage of when it bottomed out in 13, 14, 15, we started going and buying and flipping down there. So we still have a couple of rentals and some short-term rentals down there, but we're not actively buying.
Yeah.
But we know a lot of people that are. If they want to throw us a lead, right?
Yeah, there you go.
You and I got a lot of friends down there.
We should call it bureaucratic blue tape.
Yes, exactly.
Stop calling it red tape. Do you purchase properties with cash or do you do creative deals?
But cash is the answer to that. But we have strong banking relationships. So one of the strengths of our operation is that we have been working with our banking partners so long that unless it's a quick, everyone's like cash close quickly in a week. And most of the time you realize people don't want to close in a week. They're like, hey, give me time to pack up my stuff. So most of the time we're closing an average of 3 to 4 weeks. And that gives us time to go to the title company, go to the bank, and we're closing with just 10% down and the bank financing the balance, and then getting our construction loans in place to turn around. So cash, but the bank financing is a big part of it. We haven't gone big on creative, but that's, when Pace came and talked to us, it's certainly a takeaway that we need to think more about, and we're going to be offering more seller solutions. We just had a seller in my office on Monday that was talking about a fourplex that he owned, and the big thing for him was he just didn't want to pay anything in tax, had a strong aversion to paying any tax, and his basis was zero because he'd held it for 20 years, and he has a fourplex that's in decent shape. And so I proposed to him, hey, seller finance opportunity, and he's open to that. So now we've just got to go back with some options. So, just trying to, if you have 5 or 6 different options for a way a seller can exit their property, rather than just I'll pay you X, take it or leave it, I think you're going to win more in the living room.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's something that Eddie Speed and I are working on together, is how to switch to creative if cash isn't working. So, for us and our order of offers, right, is a cash deal where we'll buy it, a wholesale deal, innovations deal, creative deal, and then if none of those things work, referral to a realtor.
Yeah, you got it. No, that's it. And I think everyone should be pivoting to that model. That's very, very strong, and that's common across the industry right now with the people that I'm talking to, is just you've got to provide multiple sales strategies for them when you go into the living room. Yeah,
absolutely. So Jonathan Asbell wants to know on Facebook, what are you doing to systemize your fix and flip? So if you can go just a little bit more detail on how you're doing that exactly.
So specifically the construction side?
Well, it says fix and flip.
Yeah. So my goodness, the fix and flip really is all about construction, and we are, there's a book and an old saying, measure what matters. So we're measuring everything from acquisition to trash out, from acquisition to keys, from keys to trash out, from trash out to the first bid, to bid getting submitted to bid approved. Like literally every step along the way is getting measured in days and getting kind of a red, yellow, green. If it's off track, we get a red, and then tracking each one. So measuring every little step and putting parameters along the way so we can get alerted when something is falling out of track. Because for a long time we weren't measuring it, and suddenly we'd look back and be like, wait, why is this house just coming to now? I remember walking this 5 months ago.
Yeah.
Why is it just now coming, on market? So if you don't watch it and you're not, and then the other thing is just purely managed by walking about. You've got to get out on the job site. You've got to have your project managers on the jobs, making decisions in real time. If you leave it to the contractors to make decisions, then you're probably going to be up a creek. The other thing we're doing, Steve, is we've had an outage.
Yeah.
The other thing we're doing is systematizing by SKUs. So I think if you go to what is our website? sbdcontractor.com. I think it has literally every SKU that we have and every product that we put in a house for our turnkey product and for our flip product. So that being said, they can simply go on there and we provide them a very easy solution, either at Lowe's or Home Depot, whichever our contractor wants to use. They have specific SKUs for a faucet, for a vanity, for a countertop, for flooring. So you have to make it very easy for the contractor to be able to give us a bid and get that bid approved and then hold them accountable. And then the other thing is having penalties for delays. So we have an accountability meeting each week that our director of construction runs with our different contractors, where they come into the office, we sit down and we talk through, are you on track or off track? And because sometimes we'll get, your flooring guys didn't show up. Okay, well, how many days did that delay you? Well, that would delay us 2 days. Okay, then there are 2 excused days, like an excused absence. So there are 2 excused days, but we let them pick their completion date. And if they don't hit their completion date, it's a $200 a day penalty. And then again, if it goes out by 2 days and there were 2 days excused, then there's no penalty. But if they missed by 20 days and only 10 days are excused, then that'd be paying us, equivalent of $2,000 on the back end. So holding our contractors accountable, putting measurements in place. You're not trying to penalize them. You're just trying to say, hey, if things drag, especially when the market's going like this, it's costing us way more than $200 a day, not just with the carrying cost and the interest and the consternation that we have to go in and start, applying more and more of our time and effort and energy around the actual
babysitting it.
Getting the house and babysitting it. And then it's going to sell for less because we're taking, to longer and the market might be going down. So we went back and looked and it's been, since we've implemented that, it's gotten a lot better.
That's awesome. I have people ask me all the time, Steve, why don't you flip? And my answer's always been, I don't need any more people to manage. It's not a requirement.
It's like anything. If you want to be good at it, you've got to measure it, track it, and then hold people accountable. And you've got to have people that are doing that on a regular basis in the construction field.
Right. But I'm saying, that's just one more thing I got to do. It's like, I'm good here.
Yeah.
So you mentioned a book, Measure What Matters. So not a lot of people talk about the book. They talk about, traction. They talk about the 4 disciplines of execution. Right. There's all sorts of different books. Why Measure What Matters?
It was, well done on the title. I'm always
well done on the title.
Yeah, I'm always. I don't know if that one was referred to me, if I picked it up off a shelf, but when I saw it, I think that was one I think it might have even been a Barnes & Noble. Hey, you like this book? What about this book?
Yeah.
Or on Amazon. So yeah, I pulled it, read it, and it was just, if you care about the number, it said 2 things. If you care about the number, measure it, and then if you're measuring something if you're given a report and you don't read it, then you shouldn't be measuring it anyway. Don't dump a whole bunch of KPIs on your team if they're not really applicable to you. Like, have them measure only what matters. So it's sometimes we just get so bogged down in the minutia that we have our employees creating reports to give to us, and then you don't even read them anyway. So I think fewer metrics and ones that actually matter are the key takeaways from that book.
Yeah, I can't remember exactly who wrote it, but Google runs their business by Measure What Matters, or OKRs, right? So Google runs their business that way, and this is all out of the brainchild from Andy Grove, one of the founders of Intel. So we haven't implemented a lot of it. It was a very fascinating book, right, for business concepts, but we already have our existing processes and structures. I'm not saying that they're we can't change them. It's just it's a little bit of a different philosophy style. I was just curious as to how that came up. A follow-up question from Jonathan Asbel. What assets do you believe are in for a major fall?
So there's some danger with short-term. People are becoming short-term rentals are here to stay. Airbnb, Vacasa, all the big boys are. They've hit a niche because I enjoy traveling and staying in a home, even especially with another family. If we go, rather than staying in a hotel, just it's a better feel. You have your own privacy, that kind of thing. So they're here to stay. However, there could be a crash with legislating out short-term rentals in certain areas. They're kicking up a fuss, and so that's something that I would be very cautious of. If people are buying in an area and then suddenly short-term rentals are either outlawed or no longer available, that will be a big dip. I think in general, I think there'll be a haircut across the board with, the fervor that was in the market. Let's say you had a house that was going to go on the market for $300,000. You'd get multiple offers and you'd end up selling for 330. I think we've leveled off. Like, it's not so much that the market's gone down 10%. I just think the fervor of multiple offers, highest and best, and you have to pay more is gone.
Wholesaling for full market value.
It's crazy, right?
Yeah.
So I think there's a correction that's taking place, but I'm not betting on real estate. I don't necessarily think that, the answer to his question clearly is, the stuff in the, 700 plus range, right? That's always the first to feel it. But where we're at in Kansas City, I mean, our market swings up and down are so even keeled anyway that we're really not concerned about the price of it. But having said that, I think there's opportunities with rental assets because you are going to have stronger appreciation with fewer buyers coming into the market on a retail side. They're going to have to rent either longer or move into renting. And so I think there's opportunities with, new construction rentals, really high quality rental homes will be an area for improvement. And then new construction single family is probably going to take a hit as well. When people that are building new construction single family with rates, remaining high, it's just hard for someone to go and chunk down, $400,000 for a smaller home than they can go get a used one for the same thing.
Right. Chief Keef wants to know, what is your biggest regret in real estate?
Everything happens for a reason. So I wouldn't even say the business divorce was my biggest regret. That spurred me on to different topics. There's some people not growing as an individual. I think if I was to self-reflect, I think I could have grown as a leader of men and women earlier in my career and invested more in myself because I think there was some turmoil. As a small entrepreneur, a small business owner and entrepreneur back in the day, I didn't. You're hustling and grinding, and the thing I didn't realize was that your employees are never going to hustle and grind and care about a company the same way you do. They care, but they never care like you do, and you have to respect that. Once you reach a certain point, probably north of 6 or 7 employees, like you work for them now. And I think realizing that sooner, like investing in I read books on business and scaling and growing, but I didn't really invest in myself and becoming a better leader of men and women, and that's probably a regret that I have. I think I would have accelerated my company's learning curve and avoided some of the layoffs that I had to do. What I've done well, I would answer that question also by saying I feel like what I've done well recently is hired super talented people. Like our team right now is, really, really elevated to the point where, truly they know more about their position than I do. I mean, these are people that are highly qualified in each of their craft, whether it be finance or marketing or acquisitions or property management. In all capacities, they're operating at a really high level. And so probably my biggest regret would be when you're a small business owner, you tend to just say, I have a budget of $60,000 to bring on a new, acquisitions agent or whatever a marketing person. We're not realizing that for 70 grand, you could get someone that's way more talented, holds himself accountable more, is going to be a better team member, and you won't have to fire that person you're going to only pay 60 for when they want to leave and get what they're really worth down the road. So, I think anyone who's scaling and growing a company should take a strong look at the value that a truly talented team member can bring to the table, because when you pay for talent, you can step out of the role a little bit sooner, and they will elevate and allow you to go focus on what your core competencies are along the way.
Earlier in the show, you were talking about culture. So we can have a total deep dive about culture. So, what are your thoughts on what about culture are you most passionate about?
Everyone wants to have a place where they do enjoy coming to work every day. I think I was unable to provide that before I hired my COO because I didn't realize that people actually want to be held accountable. And I am lousy at that. That is one of my, kryptonites.
You and me both.
Just not, I mean, I walk into a room, I say, this is what we should, do we all agree this is the right thing to do? Okay, great, go do it. And then I walk out and assume that everyone's going to get it done. Well, now I walk out of the room, Chris Johns is still there like, okay, takeaways. You do this and you do that. And what were you going to do? And do you remember what you were meant to do? And then let's write that down. Let's put it in planner and tasks and make sure that everyone's on the same page. And then we're going to meet back next week and make sure we've got these tasks lined up. I'm like, oh, so that's how you become a high functioning, office. So, yeah, our partnership between Chris and I has really benefited the company because you've got to have the visionary and the vision, and someone that's creating coming up with big ideas and creating big relationships and avenues to grow. In fact, as I said earlier, I mean, if we didn't have the multifamily new construction, we would be in a very difficult position right now. But that's an area where I saw growth, and we went and tackled that. But to have someone behind the scenes that's working tirelessly to create an environment where people can grow and learn and become the best versions of themselves, I think would be very valuable. And the other thing is really investing in getting to know the people that you're working with. It's the little things. We have gone to Royals games together. We've gone curling together, like on the ice. It was a great company Christmas party. We've had the ice cream truck come to the office. We've had pancake breakfast. When you're spending that much time together, you've got to get to know people. And I think you would. I think if people in our space. Well, you've heard of NPS.
Yeah, Net Promoter Score. Yep.
Okay, so Net Promoter Score for those out there, it's basically a way to gauge how well you are doing, typically with your customers. But there's ENPS, which is an Employee Net Promoter Score, which gauges how well you are doing as a company. And it's all anonymous, so everyone can be very transparent. So when we first did our survey, we got a 71, which is off the charts amazing. Anything north of 70 is exceptional.
Mm-hmm.
But they said the one thing we want was health insurance, because we didn't offer health insurance as a company benefit. So we added that last year, despite obviously all we were going through as a benefit. The other thing was merch. We learned, that, hey, we'd like a little bit more merch. No worries. So now we, provide them a T-shirt every quarter, like Chasing 90 or, whatever the theme might be. We're giving them a little bit of merch. And it's those things that provide, a way for them to feel like they're part of a team. And we are now proud to say that we raised it. We're a 91 on the ENPS out of 30 employees.
Wow.
91. I think there was like 2 people. There was no detractors, and there were some neutrals, and then I think 9 out of 10 were obviously in the promoters. So super strong, culture at the office. And again, I take very little credit because it's not me that's changed, but it's the team that has rallied, and we put people in positions to actually be culture warriors for us to build that amongst the people, and hiring the right people, right seat has been a big part of it.
So there's something you said, a small part of it, you just kind of breeze through it, was same page, right? And Chris Johns, right, who's also been on the show, he talks about, what you're going to do, when it's going to be done by, this and that, right, putting on the planner. But that part you said about same page, where I struggle the most as a visionary, is like, here's what I want. And for the longest time, what I said I wanted and what they heard were not the same thing.
Yeah.
So, I'm not great at this, but I'm getting a little bit better, right? So now we're talking about, like, here's what I want, here's why it's important, here's when I like it, here's when I like to have it done by, and what questions do you need me to answer before you proceed to get this done, right? So I'm not great at this, but I'm getting slowly better at it.
One of the ways one of the things we've implemented in the last 12 months, because people want clarity in their position, is the one-page strategic plan, the OPSP that came out of Daniel Marcos's, coaching that I've done with him. And the importance of having, so on the OPSP, it's literally one page, and it has your core values, which obviously, and your BHAG. It has your annual goals, the company's annual goals, company's quarterly goals, and then the lower third of the paper is for their metrics and their KPIs. What are and their goals for the next 90 days? And every 90 days, they review it, they talk about it with the manager, and they make sure they have a plan. So it's very simple. They know if they do these 3 things and hit these 3 metrics, that they're winning. You talked about 4DS, Chris McChesney's book, The 4 Disciplines of Execution. He says, give your employees a winnable game and then just keep score.
Yeah.
So if you give your employees a winnable game and then have a scoreboard, LeBron would not be driving down, to lay up for 2 if they needed 3 to win. You've got to have a scoreboard to know where you're at in the game.
Right.
So give your employees a scoreboard, or give your employees a winnable game. So show what we want to get done, and then just document it through metrics to see where they are on track or not.
That's a really, really, really great plan. Great point. And talking about Daniel Marcos, he was on the show in November, right? So a few months ago. And man, like what a story that guy's had.
He's a beast. I love my time with Daniel.
Yeah, and we were talking about something, and we were talking about irrational confidence. I think, or no, it wasn't that. We were talking about infinite risk tolerance. And he's like, I told him, I don't think there's any person I've met in my life that's had like a higher risk tolerance than myself. He's like,
That's so one of the things that Daniel is my coach and love him dearly. One of the people I reached out to when everything was tanking and things just weren't selling, and I'm like, hey, just on our weekly call, I'm like, or monthly call, I'm like, what do I do here? And one of the things that he said to me that I will always remember is, Mark, there are times for a CEO to be watching what is going on, and there are times for a CEO to jump in and start working on the business. Roll up your sleeves. The next 2 years for real estate, you're gonna have to work in the business. Like everyone wants to work on their business and this and that. He's like, no. There's times for you when stuff is smooth sailing, you can tweak and go do this and work on bigger projects. Now's the time to roll your sleeves up, get stuck back into the minutia. Everyone wants a self-operating business, but until it is self-operating, you got to get in there and operate. And when there's unfortunately a few layoffs, I think we laid off 4 or 5 people, as I said back in October. That there's a little disruption in the org. You got to make sure that people have a clear vision. So preach your vision daily. We're big morning huddle people. That was another culture thing. We have a daily morning huddle, 8:37 every single morning, that everyone is on and talking about their wins and things that they're doing in the business. That's been a big part of people getting to know each other, because they can say personal wins as well as a business wins. So you get to know the people. But yeah, that was a big wake up call when he said, jump into the business and start working on it.
Yeah. And he's gone through adversity. He's seen a lot. So I think that's awesome. And, it was interesting when he was in here, he was like, yeah, you guys talking about like doubling down and trying to conquer and seize market share right now. Like, you guys are talking about 2020 and in 2022 and maybe 2023. It's like, you guys are too short-sighted. You got to be ready for 2024. It's like, that's a long thinking, right? Business owner. And the other thing too, talking about, rolling your sleeves up, is that something Ren Bartlett and I, mostly Ren Bartlett talks about, is like, there's wartime CEO and there's peacetime CEO. I've been a pretty decent peacetime CEO. I was a pretty good wartime operator, but I've never had to be a wartime CEO because when things were tough last time, I was in the field. I was the boots on the ground. So this is a whole different world.
Yeah, and I think in the wartime CEOs, what they do is they keep preaching the same message. They give their troops stability through a clear vision of what you're going to do to get them through this time. One of the big messages that I sent to my team was, hey guys, I've been here before. I've been in 20 years. I'm glad that this is not our first rodeo. We got through 08, 09. I've seen market cycles. We've prepared for this. We've got dry powder in the bank. We understand this is how we're going to succeed. This is what I need you to do. Now go do. So you give them a clear vision of what's going to happen. I think again, everyone, I'm not saying that there's not any concern in the markets, but we at least had a plan and we kept directing people towards that plan.
Yeah, I like that. And we actually have Lena in my organization, and she said to me, it's like, Steve, how are you so freaking positive all the time? It's like, A, you're the only person on the planet that thinks I'm a positive person. And B, I've got perspective. Like I said, I started in 2007.
Yeah.
I got to witness the last crash, and like being friends or colleagues with people that were going to work and the doors were chained shut because the doors were permanently closed, not by their own decision, but by the landlord because they couldn't pay their bills, right? Like, I mean, you hear stories of this, but I knew the people that went through it, I knew the people that were getting divorced, whether they were realtors or contractors. Money was bad in 2007 through 2009. And when money's bad, you know what the next thing is.
Yep.
Right? So I was saying, I was just sharing with her, it's like, yeah, I'm not a positive person. It's just, this is nothing compared to what I've gone through before.
Perspective.
Yeah. All right. So we got some more questions in here. So we're talking about biggest regret in real estate. If real estate was not an option, what other industry or business would you be in?
Real estate was not an option. God, isn't it sad? I've really not given that much thought.
Or that's a great thing, because real estate's been good.
So I think what I do well, I think I give people options to invest their capital. So so real estate is the vehicle, but if I wasn't like fix and flipping, I'd probably go to some medium where call it a real estate financial advisor, but some mechanism, where I know that there is a lot of wealth there that is untapped right now, where people are just putting in their money in the markets just because they don't have any other options. So I do feel passionate, and I know it's not answering the question because I guess it's real estate, but it certainly would be pivoting to a different direction than where I currently am. But just advising people, of ways to avoid just that trap of just putting money into the stock market, giving them other options and alternatives, because it could be lending, it could be funds and syndications. There's many areas to do private lending deals or things like that that are fringe real estate, but outside of the fix and flip game. I think I'd be trying to open up and just I've realized that and David Phelps is so great at it, right? And he's a mentor of mine, but collaboration, the who not how, is something big that really came to me probably later in life. Not how can I build wealth or how can I fix this problem, but who could I collaborate with to help me build wealth? Who could I bring on board to help me solve this problem? And I think you start just creating partnerships and strategic alliances, and opportunities abound.
We on this podcast and other shows we have on this channel, we talk about how potentially college can be a bit of a scam, a little scammy, right? And I think stock market's like that last step, right? It's that you go to school, get good grades, right? Go get a job, and there's nothing wrong with that path, so long as you select that path. You got to opt into that path. Don't default into that path, right? And so you go get a job, and then the last thing is the last step. I think of that, forced indoctrination is stock market.
Yeah.
Right. So,
No, you're right. And I mean, college is one of those things that we're looking at now, and I've just been very clear with my children as to what I view college, which is if you're unsure, because you're still maturing, you're still growing. If you don't have a clear path of what you want to do, it's a great way to go and learn and network and grow as an individual.
It's a good default path.
It's a good default path. I'm a big fan of what in New Zealand we called an OE, an overseas experience. Obviously growing up in New Zealand is very, very different. We are such a small country that you're automatically looking rest of the world, what's going on. I think it's the opposite. Because America is so big, most people are like, well, I don't need to go. If I want to go to the beach, I go to California or Florida. If I want to go to the mountains, I go to Colorado. Like, what? I don't need to travel to the Swiss Alps, or I don't need to go to Tahiti to go on a beach. But in New Zealand, you're just always looking outward because we're such a small nation. It's kind of like little brother syndrome. And so in that same way, I would challenge that taking a year off and exploring the rest of the world and going, seeing what there is to offer, you've just got to mature into who you want to be when you grow up. And so I'm encouraging my children that college is to network and grow your friends, because your network oftentimes is the equivalent to your net worth. And if you can grow your net worth, there's a lot of times it's just utilizing and growing and befriending your network.
Yeah. Mike Stansbury? He's a CG member, right? So we were doing the call earlier, the Whale Club, Paul Sparks and I were doing that call. And I liked what he had to say was that, the rules for setting up his business, one lens he looks at his business in is, am I creating this business in a way that if I can sell it if I were so inclined? That's one lens. The other lens is, am I creating a business that my children may be interested in opting in to join me? Not forcing them to join him, but am I creating a business where my kids can opt in and want to work with me if that was the direction they want to go to? It's like, that's pretty cool, right? Am I building a business where my kids, if they wanted to, can join me?
No doubt.
All right, so this is another question from the audience. It's our good friend Eric Martin here.
Hey, Eric.
So who do you got? Chiefs or Eagles?
Well, hey, look at the theme. We put the red on for the Chiefs, right? Oh man, no, I'm super excited. It's kind of a little strange for me to be here in Phoenix with the Waste Management Phoenix Open. I'm a big golfer, and the Super Bowl, and I'm going to neither. But blessed to be here with you.
Why wouldn't you go to either? You should just stick around.
Well, I've got obligations this weekend. Actually, heading out to meet a lot of our friends at the Freedom Founders Mastermind event this weekend. So I'm excited. But no, Chiefs. Let me throw a prediction out there. I believe the Chiefs is kind of eked by 2 or 3 points in most of their games, and they just find a way to win. I think they're due to have a blowout. So I think they're going to win by 10. Go Chiefs.
Blowout. 10? I'll say we're going to go blowout. Let's go 4 touchdowns.
Don't think we'll get there. No, super respect. I mean, it's going to be an awesome game. I can't wait.
All right. And then a question from Martin Nadirsha. Multifamily is easier or more difficult heading into the future?
fairly vague. What do you mean more difficult, you think?
I think probably
find
investing
deals?
to invest in.
I
You
think
know-
in general, like I think that how I would comment there is that Wall Street is firmly entrenched in Main Street. Like the fact that Wall Street has started investing in single family homes in a very meaningful way, and we haven't gone down this path. It's probably another episode, but it's a massive impact, and they're insatiable in their appetite for more. They will not go away. People that think this is just a one-off are completely wrong. They, in the same way that Lowe's and Home Depot are now like 77% market share in the hardware space, whereas you go back 50 years and it would have been, Mr. Smith on the hardware store on the corner, like they're just gone. Like now, and in the same way, I think Mr. Smith landlords are going to be gone there because they're gobbling up all the inventory. And there'll be a time where there'll be a Lowe's and Home Depot, if you will allow me the analogy, of landlording, and they will own so many single family rentals that they will just dominate the space. So Wall Street coming in, taking advantage of single family in the same way that they have kind of done multifamily. Yeah, I think real estate's going to be harder to find deals. But the encouragement I would give your audience is that it's a nimble and a very inefficient business, right? You can't trade it instantaneously like you can on the stock market, right? So the inefficiencies of trading allow for opportunity. And so when it takes 30 or 60 days to sell an asset, that's time and opportunity for someone to go and get a deal. When there's local operators that know a market that can go in and snag up a deal because they've just driven by it many times and they go knock on the door of the owner, there's opportunity there because it's not always just at a certain strike price and you know exactly the current market value. Value is determined by utility as well as current market value. Can you use it for something and what is it worth to different people? So there'll always be opportunities. But yeah, it's going to continue to get more and more challenging in the single family space as Wall Street firmly gets their hands on it.
Yeah, it's kind of like you were saying with the local store. Like it's just like when Walmart would go into town, or I guess these days Amazon.
Yeah.
It's going online. So one thing you and I were talking about offline before we started the show was your superpower, right? So talk to me about your superpower.
Well, I know that you ask that every time. So I was contemplating, what is my superpower? And, I think about that and you think about superheroes, that have a superpower, they're born with it. I believe my greatest superpower was my parents and my upbringing because it afforded me, they grew wings so that I could fly away. And I think that my family background is my superpower. And, truly like getting to know the De Lautour family, people understand that. When I went back home recently, I'm just reminded by it. I met with one of my sister's friends and she said, look, there's, it's everyone's family and dysfunctional families that way down here. And then there's their normal family. And then there's the De Lautour family. And I'm not taking praise myself. I'm heaping praise on my parents because that is intentional, that they just put so much time and effort into raising such great children. I mean, I'm the least performing. Like my siblings are amazing. My brother is a very famous actor in New Zealand, has been on many shows in America. My sister was a world-class triathlete and now is just the most phenomenal mother and a great business owner. And my older brother, Andrew, is super humble, but just a great guy. And he's the country manager for a rental car company in New Zealand. So just amazing people. And I just really enjoy my time with them. Always love getting back home. And I think the greatest challenge that we have as individuals is parenting. And I think that's if you look at what's going wrong in America or New Zealand or any big country, it often comes back to, what environment was this child raised in? If we could become better people and better parents and take care of our children and raise them up to be loving, well-respecting people, the earth's going to be a better place. And I think my superpower was being raised by two people that loved each other. They met each other when they were 14 and 16 years old. They have been married for 50 years, and they just continue to encourage us to be the best humans we can be.
Yeah, no, that's incredible. So I want you to think about a message you want to leave all the listeners with while making just a couple of quick announcements. Guys, if you get value today, please like, subscribe, share, comment. We actually did a Q&A yesterday, and there were some complaints that they didn't know about the Q&A. So if you guys are not subscribed, subscribe and hit the bell so you guys are aware when we go live for a Q&A, because we don't keep those up. And then we do have our sales leadership event coming up. Ren is going to be leading it. If you guys are running, if you guys are running an organization where potentially your top salespeople are leaving, they're not working hard, it seems like they don't care as much about their business as you do about your business, check out what Ren and I are offering. Text leaders to 33777. It's possible, I've seen it now with Ren's help, that you can have your salespeople want to work as hard as you do, right? You just got to figure out how to lead them effectively. And then we got Part in the Disruption tomorrow and Certainty Talks on Friday, and Max Vollmer coming out next week. So make sure you check out all that as well. So what are some last thoughts you'd like to leave the listeners with?
Sure. Let me finish by saying, don't wait to buy real estate and wait. I truly believe that the greatest wealth accumulation that anyone listening to this podcast will have over the next 20 years will be directly tied to real estate. If you have money now, buy housing. If you don't have money now, invest in yourself to learn about who you can partner with, how you can grow your real estate portfolio in the future, and start saving money. Don't just default to the norm, which is trusting a financial advisor, quote unquote, to put your money into the stock market. Like, that is a default option. Be exceptional. Find out find out people that you can partner with, educate yourself on how to invest in real estate, and then take that action, because I can promise you in 20 years' time, you'll look back and just wish that you'd bought more real estate.
Yeah, no, that's fantastic. And if you guys need any further, ammo, proof that the stock market's a scam, Tony Robbins wrote a great book, Money, Master the Game. And I was furious after reading that book or listening to that book about like how much of a scam the stock market is.
If you're not on the inside, you're firmly on the outside.
Yeah, exactly right. How can someone get a hold of you?
Oh, yeah, I would love to. I have a podcast and a YouTube channel, Mistake Free Real Estate. So look me up there. We do stay pretty active on Instagram at Marck De Lautour, and the same on Facebook. But for those also, if I can just do a quick shout out, Steve, if you're operating in Kansas City, we'd love to partner with you. Realtors and wholesalers in the Kansas City marketplace. If you're not working with us already, please do. We are going to be coming in and aggressively buying, and we just love to collaborate. We're big believers in the power of collaboration. Actually starting up a new realtor roundtable that we're hosting live in studio at our office as well. That
Awesome.
it's going to be really powerful, because I believe passionately, which is why the title of this show today was so relevant, that I believe real estate agents don't have the knowledge base to just confidently invest in real estate. And so I'm taking it upon myself to coach up real estate agents who are making good money and could invest in real estate to take that first step and start buying real estate themselves. So we're taking up that mantra and running with it in Kansas City.
Awesome. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Steve.
Thank you guys for watching. See you guys tomorrow.
Shout out to Steve Trang. Jump on the Steve Trang. We real estate disruptors.